On the very bridge where my husband once swore to protect me from any storm, he instead threw me out of his car, leaving me for dead in the pouring rain. The sound of a car door slamming shut in a thunderstorm is a definitive, final sound. It's a crack of thunder made by human hands, a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence you never wanted to read. For me, that sentence was my marriage. And the punctuation mark was my husband, Mark, leaving me standing on the Blackwood Creek Bridge with nothing but the clothes on my back and the echo of his final words ringing in my ears. "You're a liability, Sarah. A dead weight." His face, illuminated for a split second by a flash of lightning, was a mask of cold fury I hardly recognized. This was the man who, 5 years ago, on this very same bridge, had sworn to protect me from any storm life could throw at us. Now he was the storm. He'd shoved me out of the passenger seat, my purse with my phone and wallet still on the floor of his precious car, and peeled away, tires screeching a protest that was lost in the roar of the wind and rain. I stood there, paralyzed by a shock so profound it felt like being submerged in ice water. The rain wasn't just falling. It was a physical assault, plastering my thin blouse to my skin, turning my hair into a dripping mess that streamed into my eyes. The wind howled through the steel girders of the bridge, a mournful, terrifying sound that vibrated right through the soles of my shoes. Below me, the creek, normally a gentle ribbon of water, was a churning, muddy torrent, hungry and loud. Each flash of lightning bleached the world white for a terrifying heartbeat, showing me the thrashing trees on the far bank and the empty, slick asphalt stretching in both directions. My first coherent thought wasn't about Mark, or our fight, or the mountain of debt he'd accused me of creating. It was a simple, primal fear. I was alone, utterly, terrifyingly alone in the middle of nowhere, on a bridge, in a storm that felt like the end of the world. My legs started to shake, a tremor that began in my knees and worked its way up my entire body until my teeth were chattering. I wrapped my arms around myself, a pathetic defense against the bone-deep cold that was setting in. The fight had been brewing for months. Mark's tech startup, his brilliant idea that was supposed to make us millionaires, had been circling the drain. The tension in our house had become a physical presence. A third person sitting with us at the dinner table, silent and menacing. I tried to be supportive. I'd worked double shifts at the diner, picked up extra hours, told him we could downsize, sell the house, anything to get out from under the crushing weight. But for Mark, downsizing was admitting defeat. And in his mind, the defeat wasn't his. It was mine. "If you hadn't wanted that bigger house," he'd snarled tonight, his voice venomous as we drove back from another disastrous meeting with a potential investor. "If you weren't so obsessed with keeping up appearances, I could have put more capital into the business." The accusation was so ludicrous, so breathtakingly unfair, that I just snapped. All the months of biting my tongue, of walking on eggshells, of soothing his bruised ego, they just evaporated. I screamed back at him, listing every sacrifice I'd made, every dream I'd put on hold for his grand vision. It was ugly and raw, and it ended with him pulling over on this bridge, the place where he'd once promised me the world, and throwing me out like a piece of trash. Headlights cut through the gloom. Car was coming. Hope, fragile and desperate, fluttered in my chest. I stepped a little closer to the road, my arm half raised. The car sped past, sending a tidal wave of grimy water up my legs, soaking me to the bone. The driver didn't even slow down. Another car passed, and another. To them, I was just a shadow, a part of the storm, something to be driven past as quickly as possible. My hope shriveled and died, replaced by a cold, hard knot of despair in my stomach. My phone was gone. My wallet was gone. I was miles from town and no one was going to stop. I gripped the wet, cold metal of the railing, my knuckles white. For a wild, terrifying moment, I looked down at the churning water below. The roar was almost hypnotic, a siren's call promising an end to the cold, the fear, the humiliation. It would be so easy. A single, simple movement. My whole body shuddered, and I recoiled from the edge as if it were electrified. No, I wouldn't let him do this to me. I wouldn't let his cruelty be the last word in my story. Anger, hot and pure, began to burn through the cold. It was a small flame, but it was enough. I turned my back to the railing and faced the empty road, my chin held high, letting the rain wash over my face. I would walk. It would take hours, but I would walk all the way back to town, and I didn't know what I would do, but I would do something. It was then that I saw it. Another set of headlights, but these were different. They weren't the hurried, frantic beams of the other cars. They were steady, calm, and they were slowing down. A vehicle emerged from the sheet of rain, a shape so sleek and out of place in this rural nightmare that it looked like a mirage. It was a large, black, luxury SUV, the kind you see in movies, with windows so darkly tinted you couldn't see a hint of who was inside. It didn't pull over so much as glide to a halt a few feet away from me, its engine a low, powerful hum that was barely audible over the storm. I stood frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. Who would be driving a car like this out here, in this weather? A wave of fear, colder and sharper than the rain, washed over me. This was a bad idea. This was how horror movies started. I took a half step back, ready to run, though I had no idea where I would go. Then, with an almost silent whisper, the back passenger window slid down. I couldn't see the person inside clearly, just a silhouette in the dimly lit interior. But I could see enough to know it was a woman. She leaned forward slightly, and a calm, composed voice, a voice that held an unnerving lack of surprise, cut through the noise of the storm. He always did have a flair for the dramatic, didn't he? The words hung in the air, impossibly clear over the drumming rain. He always did have a flair for the dramatic, didn't he? The question wasn't aimed at me so much as it was a statement of fact, a shared, bitter observation. My mind reeled. How could this stranger, this silhouette in a car that cost more than my entire life savings, know him well enough to pinpoint his theatrical cruelty? For a moment, I was too stunned to speak. I just stared into the dark interior of the SUV, rain dripping from my chin, my body shivering uncontrollably. Who are you? I managed to stammer, my voice thin and reedy against the wind. The door clicked open with a heavy, satisfying thud. The interior light came on, illuminating the woman inside. She was older than me, maybe in her late 40s, with an air of elegance that the stormy night couldn't touch. Her dark hair was styled in a sleek, severe cut, and she wore a simple but obviously expensive silk blouse. There was a sharpness to her features, a kind of weary intelligence in her dark eyes that seemed to see right through my soaked clothes and into the chaotic mess of my soul. "My name is Eleanor," she said, her voice still impossibly calm. "And right now, I'm the best chance you have of not catching pneumonia. Get in, Sarah." She knew my name. The shock of it was a physical blow, sending another wave of tremors through me. My feet felt rooted to the wet asphalt. Every instinct screamed at me to run, that this was some elaborate, terrifying trap. But where would I run? Back into the storm? Towards the churning, black water? The alternative was this woman, this impossible enigma who knew my husband and knew my name. "How do you know me?" I asked, my voice trembling. A small, sad smile touched her lips. "Mark talks, especially when he thinks he's found someone who will believe his stories. Now, are you getting in? Or are you going to stand there until a truck mistakes you for a deer?" The bluntness of her words cut through the fog of my fear. She was right. Staying on this bridge was a death sentence, one way or another. Taking a deep, shuddering breath that tasted of rain and exhaust fumes, I stumbled forward and slid onto the plush leather seat. The door closed behind me, and the world went silent. The roar of the storm was instantly muffled, reduced to a distant, ignorable hum. The air inside was warm, dry, and smelled faintly of leather and a perfume that was both floral and spicy. It was like stepping into another dimension. Eleanor didn't speak right away. She reached over to a small console and produced a thick, cashmere blanket, draping it over my shoulders. The warmth was immediate and overwhelming. I pulled it tighter around myself, my chattering teeth slowly beginning to still. The driver, a large man whose face I couldn't see in the rearview mirror, put the car into gear and we began to move, gliding smoothly away from the bridge, away from the scene of my humiliation. I watched it disappear in the side mirror until it was just another string of lights swallowed by the rain. "He took your purse, I assume," Eleanor stated, not asked. I could only nod, clutching the soft wool. "Phone, wallet, keys. The trifecta. He likes to leave his victims with absolutely nothing. It makes the lesson more memorable. Victims. Plural." The word sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "I don't understand," I whispered, looking at her properly for the first time. Her face was composed, but there was a deep-seated anger in her eyes, an ancient fire that burned low and steady. "How do you know all this? Are you a friend of his?" She let out a short, sharp laugh devoid of any humor. "A friend? No, I'm not a friend. Let's just say I'm a graduate of the Mark Sterling School of Broken Promises and Empty Bank Accounts. I was his first major project." The words hung in the space between us. His first major project. Sounded so cold, so clinical. My mind raced, trying to piece it together. Had they dated? Worked together? My entire 5-year marriage felt like a flimsy cardboard cutout, and this woman was holding a match. "His business," I said, the pieces starting to click into place with a horrifying sound. "The startup. You were involved." "Involved?" She turned to look at me fully, her dark eyes locking onto mine. "Sarah, I wasn't just involved. I was the angel investor, the one who believed his pretty speeches about changing the world." Her voice dropped, becoming laced with a bitterness so profound it felt like I could taste it. "He has a pattern. He finds someone with resources, ambition, money, emotional support, it doesn't matter which, and he drains them dry. When there's nothing left to take, he manufactures a crisis, makes it their fault, and then he walks away, leaving them on their own proverbial bridge." My throat felt tight. Every word she said resonated with a terrible truth. The constant need for more money, the way he'd framed my desire for a stable home as a greedy extravagance, the final, vicious fight where he'd twisted everything to make me the villain. It wasn't a recent development. It was a strategy, a script he'd used before. We drove in silence for a few more minutes, the city lights beginning to glow in the distance. I felt a strange mix of terror and relief. I wasn't crazy. The slow-dawning horror that had been building in me for months wasn't paranoia. It was real. And this woman, this ghost from Mark's past, was the proof. "Where are you taking me?" I finally asked, my voice barely a whisper. "To a safe place. A hotel. My driver will arrange a room for you. You need to get warm, get some sleep." She looked out the window as we passed a sign for downtown. "And tomorrow we're going to talk. Because what he did to me was bad. But what he's about to do to you, to both of us, is so much worse." My heart seized. "What do you mean?" She paused, as if weighing her next words carefully. We were pulling up to the entrance of the most exclusive, expensive hotel in the city, a place I'd only ever seen in magazines. The valet was already rushing out with an umbrella. Eleanor finally turned back to me, her expression grim. "He didn't just leave you tonight because of a fight, Sarah. He left you because the whole house of cards is about to collapse. And he needed a scapegoat." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that chilled me to the bone. "My name is Eleanor Vance, and 5 years ago that tech company you sacrificed everything for, it wasn't just his idea. It was my company. He stole it from me, just like he stole your last 5 years." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. He stole it from me. My entire world, already fractured and spinning, shattered into a million unrecognizable pieces. The man I had loved, supported, and defended for 5 years wasn't a struggling entrepreneur. He was a thief. The foundation of our life together wasn't a shared dream. It was a crime. I felt a wave of nausea so intense I had to grip the leather door handle to steady myself. The valet, oblivious, held the door open for me. Eleanor gave me a look that was a mixture of pity and steel. "Arthur will see you checked in," she said, her voice soft but firm. "My number is already programmed into the phone he'll give you. Get some rest, Sarah. The real storm is just beginning." I stumbled out of the car and into the ridiculously opulent lobby of the Grand Alistair Hotel. The air was warm and smelled of fresh flowers and money. People in designer clothes glanced at me. A drenched, wild-eyed woman in a cheap, clinging blouse, with expressions ranging from curiosity to disdain. I felt like a stray dog that had wandered into a palace. Arthur, Eleanor's silent driver, was already at the front desk, speaking in low tones to the clerk. He handled everything with an unnerving efficiency. He didn't ask for a credit card or ID, things I didn't have. He simply murmured a name, Eleanor Vance, and a keycard was produced instantly. He handed it to me along with a heavy shopping bag from one of the hotel's boutiques. "Mrs. Vance arranged for these to be sent up to your suite," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Toiletries, a change of clothes. A phone and charger are inside as well. She will call you in 1 hour." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Get some sleep. You'll need it." And then he was gone. I was left standing alone in the center of the lobby, clutching a keycard to a suite I couldn't afford and a bag of clothes from a stranger who had just upended my entire reality. I made my way to the elevator on numb legs, feeling the weight of 100 judgmental stares. The suite was breathtaking. It was bigger than the first apartment Mark and I had shared. A king-sized bed with a mountain of pillows, a sitting area with a velvet couch, and a bathroom clad in floor-to-ceiling marble. I dropped the bag on the floor and walked to the massive window, looking out at the rain-lashed city lights. From up here, the storm was just a beautiful, silent show. It felt a world away from the roaring monster on the bridge. I stripped off my wet, grimy clothes, leaving them in a pathetic heap on the marble floor, and stepped into the shower. The hot water was a shock, and as it sluiced the cold and dirt from my skin, the emotional dam finally broke. I slid down the tiled wall and sobbed, deep, gut-wrenching sobs for the life I thought I had, for the man I thought I knew, for the fool I had been. He hadn't just left me, he had erased me, and he'd done it all based on a lie. After the tears stopped, a cold, hard anger began to take root in the empty space they left behind. I got out, wrapped myself in a robe that felt like a cloud, and inspected the contents of the bag. Inside was a simple black dress, comfortable-looking flats, underwear, and a high-end toiletries kit. And at the bottom, a brand-new smartphone in its box. I plugged it in and turned it on. The screen lit up with a single contact already saved, Eleanor. As if on cue, precisely 1 hour after Arthur had left me, the phone rang. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello. Are you feeling any better?" Eleanor's voice was crisp, all business. I don't know what I'm feeling," I admitted honestly. "Eleanor, is it true?" "All of it. Every word," she said, and there was no doubt in her tone. The original company was Vance Innovations. My father's company. I inherited it. Mark was a junior programmer with a silver tongue and a brilliant sense of timing. He came to me when I was at my most vulnerable, right after my father passed. He sold me a vision, became my partner, my confidant, and then he systematically locked me out of my own company, draining the accounts and leveraging the intellectual property to create a new corporate shell. By the time I realized what he'd done, he had buried the paper trail so deep I would have spent the rest of my life and fortune trying to claw it back. He left me with nothing but debt and a non-disclosure agreement he'd tricked me into signing. My blood ran cold. It was my story, just on a grander, more corporate scale. "Why are you telling me this now? Why help me?" "Because he's about to cash out, Sarah. Big. He's been in talks with a major tech conglomerate for months. The sale is imminent. I'm talking days, maybe even hours. He's selling them my stolen technology for over $50 million. Once that deal is signed, the money will disappear into an offshore account, and he will vanish. And we will be left with the wreckage." "We?" "Yes, we," she said, her voice hardening. "You don't think he planned this without an exit strategy, do you? Over the last year, as he was setting up the sale, he's been taking out massive business loans, lines of credit, all co-signed by his loving, supportive wife. He's leveraged the house you think you own. He's put debt in your name you don't even know exists. When he disappears with the $50 million, the banks and creditors won't be able to find him. But they will know exactly where to find you, Sarah. He didn't just leave you on a bridge. He made you the legal scapegoat for the implosion of the entire company. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the room spinning. Couldn't be true. But I knew with a sickening certainty that it was. I thought back to all the papers he'd asked me to sign over the past year, rushing me, saying they were just formalities for the business. My signature, I whispered, horrified. It's on everything. Exactly, Eleanor confirmed. He's going to leave you bankrupt and buried in lawsuits, taking the fall for his fraud while he sips cocktails on a beach somewhere. I've been waiting 5 years for a chance to stop him. The impending sale is that chance. But my hands are tied by that old NDA. I can't make a move against him directly without risking a countersuit that would ruin me. But you are his wife. You have rights. You have access. A terrifying idea began to dawn. She didn't just rescue me out of the goodness of her heart. She needed me. What do you want me to do? I asked, my voice barely audible. We need proof, she said, her tone urgent now. Hard proof that links the company he is selling now back to the original one he stole from me. Something that predates the documents he forged. He's arrogant. He believes he's destroyed everything, but I know him. He keeps trophies. In his home office, there's a framed copy of his first ever programming award from college. He thinks of it as the start of his genius. But behind that award, taped to the back of the frame, is the one thing he was sentimental enough to keep and stupid enough to forget. The original partnership agreement for Vance Innovations. The one with both of our signatures on it. My heart hammered against my ribs. Our house. His office. It was the one room he'd always been territorial about. He'll never let me in, I said. He'll have changed the locks. He'll call the police. He won't have had time to change the locks yet, Eleanor said confidently. And he can't call the police. You are still his wife and your name is on the deed. He cannot legally bar you from entering your own home. He's counting on you being too broken and ashamed to even try. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The problem is we're running out of time. My source tells me the final meeting, the one where the buyers will do their last due diligence before wiring the money, is tomorrow morning. At the house. So I just have to get there before they do? I asked, a sliver of hope in my voice. There was a dead silence on the other end of the line. When Eleanor finally spoke again, her voice was grave. No, Sarah. You don't understand. The meeting isn't just at the house. He's hosting a celebratory brunch for them. The caterers are arriving at 8 a.m. A celebratory brunch. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it almost made me laugh. Mark was about to destroy my life, saddle me with a mountain of fraudulent debt, and walk away with $50 million. And he was planning to close the deal over mimosas and eggs Benedict in the home I had helped build. The home that was about to be ripped out from under me. The cold anger that had been simmering in my gut solidified into a block of ice. He's that confident, I said, the words a flat statement of fact. He really believes I'll just crawl into a hole and disappear. It's his defining characteristic, Eleanor replied, her voice grim. Arrogance. He believes everyone else is a pawn in his game. He's counting on you being a weeping, hysterical mess, incapable of rational thought. He's probably already crafted a story for his lawyers and the buyers about his unstable, spendthrift wife who just had a breakdown and ran off. Leaving you on that bridge wasn't just cruel, Sarah. It was a strategic move to discredit you before you even knew there was a war. Her words were like smelling salts, snapping me out of my grief and into sharp, terrifying focus. He wasn't just a bad husband, he was a calculating enemy. And he had underestimated me. He had left a loose end. Me. Okay, I said, my voice steadier now, infused with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. Okay, what's the plan? I can't just walk in the front door in the middle of a business brunch. No, you can't, Eleanor agreed. Which is why you're not going in the front door. And you're not going in during the brunch. You're going in before. I glanced at the hotel clock. It was almost midnight. Tonight. It's the only way. He'll be back at the house tonight, sleeping in your bed, dreaming of his payday. He won't expect you. Not yet. By the time the sun comes up and the caterers arrive, that document needs to be in our hands. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Go back to that house tonight while he was there. The thought of being in the same space as him, of the potential confrontation, sent a tremor of fear through me. He had thrown me out of a moving car. What would he do if he found me in his office going through his things? I don't know if I can, I whispered, the fear making my voice crack. Yes, you can. Eleanor's voice was like a steel rod down the phone line. Because you have no other choice. It's this, or it's a lifetime of debt, lawsuits, and public humiliation. This isn't just about my company anymore, Sarah. This is about your future. Think about what he's done to you. Think about him sitting there tomorrow, toasting his success with the men who are buying his lies, while you're left with nothing. Use that anger. It's the best weapon you have. She was right. The image she painted of Mark, charming and triumphant, celebrating my ruin, ignited the ice in my stomach into a raging fire. The fear was still there, but the anger was stronger. Tell me what to do, I said. Arthur is waiting for you downstairs. He has a key to the back door of your house. I blinked. A key? How? Mark is a creature of habit. He keeps a spare hidden in a magnetic box under the grill on your back patio. He's been there since you moved in. I've had him under surveillance for the past 6 months. I know his routines better than he does. The casual mention of surveillance was chilling, but also deeply reassuring. Eleanor was not someone who left things to chance. Arthur will drive you there and wait for you at the end of the street. He'll have a car ready to go. You get in, go straight to the office. It's the second door on the left down the main hall, I know. Get the document from behind the frame. Do not take anything else. Do not make a sound. Get out. Is that clear? Clear, I said, my throat dry. One more thing, she added, her voice dropping slightly. His office has a security camera. A small, motion-activated one tucked on the bookshelf. He installed it a few months ago. He monitors it from his phone. My blood ran cold. Then how? I've already taken care of it. One of my tech people is looping the feed. For the next 2 hours, anyone looking at that camera will see an empty, silent office. But the loop only lasts 2 hours. That's your window, Sarah. You have to be in and out before it expires. 2 hours. Felt like a lifetime and no time at all. I hung up the phone, my mind racing. I quickly changed into the black dress and flats Eleanor had provided. They fit perfectly. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back was not the same one who had been sobbing on a bridge a few hours ago. Her eyes were shadowed with fear, yes, but they also held a glint of something new, something hard and determined. I slipped the slim new phone into the dress pocket, grabbed the keycard, and walked out of the suite without a backward glance. The ride back to my own neighborhood was surreal. Arthur drove the silent, luxurious SUV through the now drizzling streets, the city a blur of neon and wet asphalt. As we turned onto my street, he killed the headlights, gliding the last few hundred feet in near-total darkness. He pulled over a few houses down from mine. Every light in my house was off. It looked dark, dormant, but I knew he was in there. The grill is on the left side of the patio, Arthur said in his low voice, handing me a tiny flashlight. The key box is attached to the underside of the side shelf. Be quick. Be quiet. I'll be right here. I nodded, my heart feeling like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. I got out of the car, the night air cool and damp against my skin. The familiar scent of wet pine needles and suburban lawns filled my lungs. I crept along the side of my neighbor's house, using the shadows of the hedges for cover. My own house loomed in front of me, a dark silhouette against the faintly glowing clouds. It was my home, and I was about to break into it like a thief. My hands were shaking as I felt under the cold, wet metal of the grill's shelf. My fingers brushed against the small, rectangular box, clicked as I pulled it free. Inside, glinting in the faint light from my tiny flashlight, was the key. I took a deep, shuddering breath and moved to the back door. The lock turned with an agonizingly loud click. I froze, listening, my ears straining for any sound from within. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I slipped inside, closing the door as gently as I could behind me. The darkness was absolute. I stood perfectly still, letting my eyes adjust, every nerve ending screaming. The air was thick with the familiar scent of our life, lemon cleaner, the faint smell of coffee from this morning, and something else. His cologne. He was here. He was upstairs, sleeping. Using the tiny beam of the flashlight to guide my feet, I navigated the familiar layout of my own home, my heart in my throat. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a gunshot. I reached the hallway, second door on the left. His office. I put my hand on the doorknob, turned it with excruciating slowness, and pushed the door open. The room was just as I'd left it. Neat, orderly, dominated by his huge mahogany desk. My eyes immediately went to the wall behind it. And there it was, the framed award from his college days, gleaming under the tiny beam of my light. I crept across the room, my flats making no sound on the thick rug. I reached the desk, my hands trembling as I carefully lifted the heavy frame off the wall. I turned it over, my breath catching in my throat. And there, taped to the cardboard backing, was a folded, yellowing document. The original partnership agreement. I had it. A wave of triumphant relief washed over me. I carefully peeled the tape back, my fingers clumsy with adrenaline. I unfolded the paper, shining the light on it to be sure. And there they were, side by side at the bottom of the page. 2 signatures, Eleanor Vance and Mark Sterling. I folded it carefully and tucked it into my pocket, my mission almost complete. I turned to place the frame back on the wall, to leave everything exactly as I had found it. But as I did, my flashlight beam caught something else on the desk, something I hadn't noticed before. It was a single sheet of paper, a flight itinerary, left out in plain sight. My eyes scanned the details. A one-way ticket, departing tomorrow afternoon. Destination, Cayman Islands. But it wasn't the destination that made my blood freeze in my veins and my heart stop dead in my chest. It was the name printed on the second ticket, right below his. Passenger 2, Amelia Hayes, my best friend. Amelia. The name on the ticket felt like a physical punch to the gut, knocking the air from my lungs. Amelia, my friend since kindergarten. The one who had held my hand when my mother passed away. The one who had been my maid of honor. Her eyes filled with tears as she told me how happy she was that I had found a man like Mark. Amelia, who had listened patiently for months as I cried on her shoulder about my marital problems, offering sympathy and advice. All of it a lie. She wasn't my confidant. She was his accomplice. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it eclipsed everything else. It wasn't just my husband who had deceived me. It was my entire life. For a moment, I was paralyzed, the flight itinerary clutched in my hand. My first instinct was to run, to get out of that house with the document that could save me and destroy him. But as I stood there in the silent, oppressive darkness of his office, something shifted inside me. The fear and the hurt coalesced into a cold, diamond-hard fury. They thought I was a pawn, a liability, a weeping mess to be discarded. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. Eleanor's plan was good. It was safe. It would give me my future back. But it wasn't enough. Simply exposing him, taking back what was mine, it wouldn't heal the gaping wound of this double betrayal. I didn't just want justice. I wanted to watch the curtain fall on their final act. My mind raced, the adrenaline sharpening my thoughts. The brunch, the final meeting. They were going to be right here in my house toasting their victory. I looked at the itinerary again. Then, I carefully placed it back on the desk, exactly where I'd found it. I put the frame back on the wall, making sure it was perfectly straight. I didn't want him to know I'd been here. I wanted him to walk into his triumph utterly blind. I slipped out of the house as silently as I'd entered and got back into Arthur's waiting car. "Did you get it?" he asked, his voice low. I pulled the folded document from my pocket. "I got it." Then I added, "Take me back to the hotel. I need to call Eleanor." We have a change of plans. Back in the sterile luxury of the hotel suite, I laid out my idea to Eleanor. She listened in silence, her end of the line so quiet I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "It's risky, Sarah," she finally said, her voice laced with caution. "My plan was clean. This is theatrical. So is leaving your wife on a bridge in a storm," I countered, my voice flat and cold. "So is planning a celebratory brunch at the scene of the crime. He wants theater? I'll give him a grand finale he'll never forget." There was another pause. Then, I heard what sounded like a small, wry smile in her voice. "All right, Sarah. Let's give them their grand finale. Arthur will bring you what you need. Be ready by 7 a.m. The next morning, I did not dress in the subdued black dress of a victim. I found a high-end boutique in the hotel lobby that opened at dawn and, using a credit card Eleanor had Arthur deliver, I bought the most expensive, powerful-looking suit I could find. A sharp, crimson pantsuit that screamed confidence. I had my hair styled and my makeup done professionally. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the woman I was supposed to be before Mark had systematically eroded my confidence. I saw Eleanor Vance's successor. At precisely 8:15 a.m., just as the brunch would be getting underway, Arthur pulled the sleek black SUV up to the curb in front of our house. The caterer's van was parked in the driveway. Through the large front window, I could see them. Mark, looking smooth and victorious in a tailored suit, laughing with two older, distinguished-looking men, and standing just a little too close to him, smiling brightly as she handed him a flute of champagne, was Amelia. Eleanor sat beside me in the back seat, an avenging angel in charcoal gray. She handed me a slim portfolio. "It's all in there," she said. "Copies of the original agreement, bank statements I had my forensic accountants pull, tracing the money from my company to his. Everything they need to see the fraud. The originals are with my lawyer, who is standing by." "Are you ready?" I asked her. She gave me a thin, determined smile. "I've been ready for 5 years." We walked up the front path together, our heels clicking in unison on the stone walkway. I pushed the doorbell. A moment later, the door swung open, and Mark's smiling face froze into a mask of disbelief and horror. He stared at me, then at the formidable woman standing beside me, and the color drained from his face. "Sarah," he stammered. What are you doing here? Who is this?" I smiled, a bright, brittle thing that didn't reach my eyes. "Mark, darling, I'm so sorry to interrupt your little party. I just had some unfinished business to attend to. You remember Eleanor Vance, don't you?" The name hit him like a physical blow. Behind him, Amelia's face went pale. The two executives looked on, confused. "I believe this brunch is to celebrate the sale of your company," I continued, my voice carrying through the suddenly silent house. "A company built on some very impressive intellectual property. The thing is, gentlemen," I said, addressing the two buyers, "my husband isn't just a brilliant innovator. He's also a storyteller. And the story of how he acquired that IP is his most creative work of fiction yet." I stepped past my stunned husband and into the foyer, placing the portfolio on the hall table. "This is the real story," I said, opening it for them to see. "The story of Vance Innovations, a company he stole from this woman here, his original partner. The story of a 5-year-long fraud that is about to come to a spectacular end." One of the executives, a man with shrewd gray eyes, picked up the file and began to read. Mark sputtered, trying to regain control. "This is ridiculous. She's unstable. I told you, she had a breakdown. The breakdown you engineered by leaving me for dead on a bridge in a thunderstorm?" I asked calmly, turning to face him. "Was that before or after you booked your one-way ticket to the Cayman Islands?" I glanced over at Amelia, whose face had crumpled in terror. "You booked 2 tickets, actually. I guess you forgot to mention that part to your investors, or to your best friend's face." The second executive was now looking at the documents over his partner's shoulder, his expression hardening. Amelia started backing away, shaking her head, tears welling in her eyes. Mark, Shut up, you idiot, Mark hissed at her, his charming facade completely gone, replaced by the raw, desperate fury I'd seen on the bridge. The gray-eyed executive finally looked up from the file, his gaze like chips of ice. He looked from the damning evidence in his hands to Mark's panicked face. He didn't need to say a word. The deal was dead. He simply closed the portfolio and slid it back across the table. I think we're done here, he said, his voice clipped. He and his partner turned and walked out the door without another word. Silence descended. It was just the four of us now, standing in the ruins of Mark's $50 million dream. He turned on me, his eyes blazing with a hatred so pure it was terrifying. You, he snarled. You ruined everything. No, Mark, Eleanor said, her voice quiet but ringing with the authority of 5 years of righteous anger. You ruined everything when you decided your ambition was more important than other people's lives. My lawyers will be in touch. And so, I imagine, will the district attorney. He looked from Eleanor to me, a cornered animal searching for an escape. He saw none. He let out a strangled roar of frustration and stormed out the back door. We heard his car start and screech away. He was running, but this time there was nowhere to run. Amelia was sobbing now, a pathetic, broken sound. Sarah, I'm so sorry. He told me you two were over. I just looked at her, at the woman who had been my sister in all but blood, and I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a vast, empty space where my love for her used to be. Goodbye, Amelia, I said, and turned my back on her. Eleanor and I walked out the front door and into the bright morning sun. The storm was over. What now? I asked, shielding my eyes. She looked at me, a genuine, warm smile finally reaching her eyes. Now we rebuild. I get my company back. And you, Sarah, you get half of it. You were his wife. You're entitled to half of his assets. And as of this morning, his only real asset is the company he stole from me. That makes you my new partner.
He stared at her, speechless.
It was an outcome I had never even dared to imagine. A future, a real one, built not on lies, but on the ashes of a life I was glad to leave behind. I thought of the woman I was just 24 hours ago, shivering and alone on that bridge. And I thought of the woman standing here now, in a power suit with a powerful new ally. Mark was right about one thing. He always did have a flair for the dramatic. He just never imagined I'd be the one writing the final scene.